Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're ditching the map and compass because we're heading into a land that's more than just shifting sands and scorching sun, the Sahara Desert.
That's right. We're going beyond those iconic dunes to uncover a history as vast and dramatic as the Sahara itself. Think empires rising and falling, incredible adaptations to a challenging environment, and a legacy that continues to shape our world today.
All right, I am pumped. We've got a treasure trove of sources for you. Eyewitness accounts from ancient historians, tales told by Arab scholars, and even cutting-edge research that's painting a whole new picture of the Sahara. Get ready to have your assumptions challenged because we're about to uncover a Sahara you might not expect.
You're absolutely right. Most people just picture an endless sea of sand. But the Sahara we know today is just a snapshot in time. What's truly mind-blowing is the evidence pointing to a past where this desert was actually, well, not a desert at all.
Wait, seriously, are we talking palm trees and oases here? Or are we going full-on rainforest in the Sahara?
Think a little less rainforest, a little more Serengeti. Imagine lush vegetation, sprawling lakes, and even elephants roaming a landscape that's now parched and arid. The rock art alone tells a story of incredible biodiversity.
Elephants in the Sahara. That's a serious plot twist. But if this oasis of life was once so vibrant, what happened? How did it become the Sahara we know today?
It's a story of gradual change, a drying trend that unfolded over millennia. Influenced in part by natural climate shifts and, surprisingly, the actions of the people who called this land home. Even Herodotus, the Greek historian writing way back in the 5th century BC, described the Sahara as a desert. And if we look at the intricate Roman mosaics from that era, they depict a diverse range of animals that are long gone. These pieces of the puzzle tell us that the Sahara's transformation was already well underway even back then.
So the Sahara we often see as static and unchanging was actually a dynamic environment in constant flux shaped by both nature and the people who inhabit it.
Exactly. And speaking of those inhabitants, let's talk about the ancient Garamantes, the true pioneers who cracked the code of survival in this unforgiving land. These were people who not only survived but thrived in the face of challenges that would make even the most seasoned adventurer think twice.
The Garamantes, you say? Sounds like a group straight out of an Indiana Jones film. Don't hold out on us. Spill the details. Who were these masters of the desert?
Herodotus described them as nomadic, which they were. But don't let that fool you into thinking they were simply wandering through the sands. The Garamantes were incredibly resourceful. They developed sophisticated techniques for agriculture and trade, essentially turning the desert into a breadbasket and a bustling marketplace. They were masters of water management in an environment where every drop was precious. And you know what's even more impressive? They went toe-to-toe with the mighty Roman Empire, and for a while they actually held their own.
Hold on. Are we talking about the same Roman Empire that built roads across continents and conquered vast territories? Those Romans?
The very same. You see, the Garamantes knew the desert like the back of their hand. They were masters of guerrilla warfare, using their knowledge of the terrain and their mobility to outmaneuver and frustrate the Roman legions. It was a classic David and Goliath scenario, proving that local expertise and a deep understanding of the environment could be even more powerful than brute force.
Wow, talk about ambition. They weren't messing around, were they? But if the Garamantes were so successful, what eventually tipped the scales in the Romans' favor?
It wasn't so much a weakness on the Garamantes' part as it was a technological game changer. The introduction of the camel to North Africa. This seemingly simple addition completely revolutionized Roman logistics. Camels could cover vast distances with minimal water, allowing the Romans to penetrate deeper into the Sahara and sustain their campaigns for longer periods.
So the camel, the ship of the desert, completely changed the game, turning a seemingly impenetrable barrier into a highway for conquest. It's incredible how one innovation can have such ripple effects throughout history. But this begs the question. If the Romans were now able to traverse the Sahara with relative ease, what did that mean for the region?
Well, it opened the floodgates, not just for armies, but for something even more transformative: trade. The Sahara was no longer a dividing line, but a bridge connecting diverse cultures and empires. This is where we see the emergence of the legendary trans-Saharan trade routes.
The trans-Saharan trade routes, now we're talking. This is where the image of camel caravans laden with exotic goods comes to mind. But I'm curious, what were they trading? I'd imagine gold was high on the list, right?
Yeah, gold was definitely a hot commodity, but it wasn't the only thing moving along those sandy highways. We're talking slaves, ivory, precious stones, textiles. You name it, it was likely being traded across the Sahara. But here's where things get really interesting. Imagine a world where salt was more valuable than gold. You heard that right. Salt, a basic necessity we take for granted today, was once a luxury commodity, especially in areas where it was scarce. Control over salt mines and trade routes could make or break empires.
Wow. Who knew salt was such a hot commodity? It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. It just goes to show that what we consider valuable can shift drastically depending on time and place. But the trans-Saharan trade was about much more than just material goods.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What else was flowing along these trade routes besides salt and gold?
Ideas. Culture. Think of it as a grand exchange of knowledge and beliefs traversing the desert. For instance, the spread of Islam across North and West Africa was deeply intertwined with these trade routes.
Oh, wow, I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, scholars, merchants, and missionaries traveled alongside traders, sharing their faith and influencing the cultural landscape of the region.
So the Sahara, once seen as a barrier, was actually a catalyst for cultural exchange and the spread of ideas. It's like a giant sandy Silk Road.
That's a great analogy. And just like the Silk Road, it wasn't without its share of power struggles. Speaking of which, have you ever heard of the Almoravids?
The name rings a bell, but I can't say I know their story. Were they another empire vying for control of these valuable trade routes?
You bet. The Almoravids were a force to be reckoned with. Imagine a group of Berber nomads, deeply devout and incredibly disciplined, emerging from the depths of the Sahara with a fiery brand of Islam and a hunger for conquest.
Okay, I'm already getting the sense that these weren't folks you wanted to mess with.
Yeah, no kidding. At their helm was a charismatic leader named Ibn Yasin who rallied these disparate tribes under a unified banner. They were driven by faith, yes, but they were also savvy strategists and brilliant military minds.
Okay, I'm getting a sense that these weren't folks you wanted to mess with. Did they manage to build an empire from their Sahara stronghold?
They did more than manage, they excelled at it. They conquered a territory so vast it boggles the mind, stretching from the Senegal River all the way to the Iberian Peninsula.
Oh, they crossed an entire continent. That's saying something.
That's right. They crossed an entire continent, leaving their mark on the landscape and history of both North and West Africa. And remember, the wealthy kingdom of Ghana we mentioned earlier, the one known for its gold trade. Yeah, the Almoravids conquered them too.
Wow, that's saying something. They conquered the Gold Kingdom. Clearly, the Almoravids weren't just desert dwellers. They were empire builders on a grand scale. It seems like every layer we peel back reveals another fascinating chapter in the Sahara's history. But I have to ask, with all this talk of empires and conquests, were the Europeans just sitting on the sidelines watching this all unfold?
They weren't exactly wallflowers. Drawn by the allure of gold, ivory, and other riches, Europeans began to set their sights on the Sahara as well. But navigating that harsh desert terrain proved to be a whole different ballgame than sailing the open seas.
That makes sense. I imagine venturing into the Sahara back then would have been like stepping onto another planet. What were some of the challenges they faced?
Where do we even begin? It was a constant battle against the elements, scorching heat, limited water sources, treacherous sandstorms. And then there were the political and cultural barriers, navigating complex relationships with existing empires and adapting to unfamiliar customs and languages.
It sounds like a recipe for disaster, and I'm guessing not everyone who dared to enter made it out to tell the tale.
You're right, it was a dangerous game, and many met tragic ends. Take the story of Mungo Park, a Scottish explorer determined to map the course of the Niger River.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
Armed with unwavering ambition and a thirst for discovery, he ventured into the heart of the Sahara, but sadly lost his life in the attempt, succumbing to the very challenges we just discussed.
His story is a sobering reminder of the risks these early explorers took. It must have been a true clash of cultures, these Europeans with their maps and compasses entering a world steeped in ancient traditions and ways of life. But despite the dangers and the cultural divide, the lure of the Sahara proved too strong to resist.
And that brings us to a pivotal moment in the Sahara's history where the old world collided with the new and the seeds of change were sown. What stands out to you so far in this tale of transformation? Anything surprise you about the Sahara's past?
Honestly, I'm blown away by how dynamic and interconnected this region has always been. I had no idea that Sahara was such a melting pot of cultures and empires, a stage for such grand ambitions and dramatic power struggles.
That's the beauty of the deep dive, isn't it? Peeling back the layers of time to reveal the hidden complexities of a place we thought we knew. But remember, the Sahara story isn't over. It's a story that continues to unfold even today.
You're absolutely right. The Sahara story is far from over. But before we dive into its future, I'm curious about something. We've talked about empires and explorers, but what about the everyday lives of the people who called the Sahara home? What can our sources tell us about how they navigated this challenging environment?
That's a great question, and it brings us to some truly fascinating insights into human ingenuity and adaptation. For instance, several historical accounts describe a practice known as the silent trade.
Silent trade. Okay, now that sounds like something straight out of a history mystery novel. Tell me more.
Imagine this. Two groups of traders, perhaps separated by language barriers, or maybe just a healthy dose of distrust wanting to exchange goods without ever actually meeting face to face.
Okay.
So they would arrive at a predetermined location in the desert, one group leaving their goods and retreating. The other group would then approach, assess the offerings, leave their own goods in exchange, and then they too would back away.
So it was like a trust-based barter system happening in the middle of the Sahara.
Hmm.
No haggling, no negotiations, just a silent agreement based on mutual need and respect.
Exactly. It's a testament to how people found ways to connect, communicate, and cooperate, even in the most isolated and seemingly desolate environments. It challenges our assumptions about what's possible when it comes to human interaction and trust building.
It's incredible, isn't it? The Sahara, often portrayed as a place of separation, actually fostered these incredible examples of human connection and ingenuity. It makes you wonder what other secrets and stories are still hidden beneath the sands.
And these interactions, just like the camel caravans and the empires that rose and fell, also left their mark on the environment. Our sources highlight how even seemingly barren landscapes are vulnerable. They tell a story of how human actions have shaped the Sahara's delicate ecosystem over time.
That's a powerful reminder, isn't it? We often think of deserts as static, almost timeless. But the Sahara story shows us that even these environments are in a constant state of flux, influenced by both natural forces and our own actions.
Precisely. And as we look to the future, it's a reminder that the choices we make today will have a ripple effect for generations to come. Climate change, for instance, is already impacting the Sahara, causing shifts in weather patterns and affecting already scarce water resources. And then there are the demands of growing populations, the potential for resource exploration, and the ongoing dance of geopolitics, all intertwined with the Sahara's fate.
It sounds like the Sahara is standing at a crossroads, facing both challenges and opportunities. What do you think the future holds for this vast and ever-evolving region?
That's the question, isn't it? What will the Sahara's next chapter be? It's a question with no easy answers, but one thing's for sure. Understanding the Sahara's past, its cycles of change, its resilience, and its deep connection to human history is crucial if we want to navigate the complexities of its future.
You know, when we embarked on this deep dive, I thought we were just exploring a desert. But it turns out we've been on a journey through time uncovering the hidden stories of humanity's relationship with this incredible and ever-changing landscape. It's been eye-opening, to say the least.
It truly has. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with a final thought to ponder. How can we as citizens of a globally interconnected world learn from the Sahara's past? How can we apply the lessons of resilience, adaptation, and respect for this delicate environment to create a more sustainable and harmonious future, not just for the Sahara, but for our planet as a whole?
That's a question worth considering. From the ancient Guermantes who mastered desert living to the silent traders who found ways to connect across vast distances, the Sahara reminds us that even in the face of adversity, human ingenuity and our capacity for connection have always found a way. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the Sahara's past, present, and future. Until next time, keep exploring.